are looking to enter or accelerate within the federal marketplace. That company is called the Fed Propel Institute. It's part of Fed Propel Enterprises. So we are a supply chain management firm that works in the federal government marketplace primarily, extending to state and local probably in 2025. So we have what we call it's the 310 initiative. Over the next 10 years, we want to help 10,000 small businesses, particularly minority-led small businesses, annually receive $10 billion in federal contracts. How do we do that? By providing knowledge, providing network, and providing decision intelligence. And we can talk about that later, but for this presentation, we really, because we only have 30 minutes, we want to get into an overview of what it takes to be in the federal marketplace. So, can we have the slide? Okay, so how many of you want to start with the question?
Yeah, so just want to kind of poll the room so we have have some insights in terms of who you guys are representing. So how many have no experience with federal contracting, don't know anything about it? Raise a hand. Wow, okay. How many have worked for the federal government at some point in their career? All right. How many people are a subcontractor to the federal government? All right. And how about prime contractors?
Oh.
Awesome.
Yep,
all right, so we got a good mix in the room here.
Okay, so we're going to take a high-level overview. Federal government is a buyer of things. Pretty much anything that you can think of, the federal government buys, except for a couple what they call sin products. We will skip over what those are, but have an idea. Government even buys marijuana. They don't talk about it, but they do. Last year, federal government spent almost $700 billion purchasing goods and services. It's a lot of money. In addition to that, it issued over, I think, $1.2 trillion in grants. So it buys things from contracts with a specific set of outcomes. It issued grants with a certain set of objectives. So whether you want to sell to the government under a contract or you want to get a grant, there's opportunities for both. And so in order to work in the federal marketplace, you have to be in this what's called SAM. And Jennifer, can you talk a little bit about SAM in the registration process?
Yep, so there's a few requirements to do business with the federal government. The first is to be registered in the System for Award Management, also known as SAM, sam.gov. So if you want to do business, if you want to get paid, you have to register there. So once you get through SAM, one of the other things that we recommend is that you guys start learning what the federal regulations are. So the Federal Acquisition Regulation, also known as the FAR, you're signing a contract with the government, whether you're a prime or a sub, you're going to see FAR clauses that take up a good portion of your contract. If you don't understand what those are, it's going to be really hard for you to manage and actually engage with your client, because they're going to learn really quickly how much you know about the business of federal contracting. How well are you going to be able to manage and deliver on the outcomes? And if you don't know what the governing part is of your contract, it's really hard to do that successfully. And so highly recommend that you guys either learn it yourselves, and I think you, as a business owner, you really do need to do that, or you have people on your team that have that experience.
Yes.
So I actually teach a course for the National Contract Management Association for their certification program on reading the FAR. So I'm in it all day, every day, more than I would like, but it's really important from that perspective. That's going to tell you how you get paid. I bid on a contract, and I said, hey, there's no payment terms in here. They loved it because I was able to showcase my expertise and say, we really can't have a transaction here unless you guys can pay me. What that did allowed me to negotiate for payment upon receipt. Now, most of you have done business with the federal government. It takes a long time to get paid. They now have a small business clause that allows you to get paid within 15 days. Still never really happens.
Gotcha.
So
I don't know the FAR. I've been doing it for about 3 years, but I do have someone on my team that knows it very well. Well, we don't have the slideshow up, but we will get that out to everyone. It'll be as part of the package, so don't worry about that. How many have applied for a bank loan? So if you think about federal contracting, think about it as from a banker. Contracting officers have what's called a fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the government gets its goods and services the highest and best use of its dollars. So their job is based on the fact that they give the government's money out, the government gets something back in return. They are risk averse. So for bankers and contracting officers, they need to know, like, and trust. Know who you are, like who you are as a person, and trust that you can deliver. So that's one of the things that we talk about with people. I'm sure some of you have seen these things on Instagram. I went on a bunch of stuff on Clubhouse about 2 or 3 years ago where people say, I can help you get a federal contract in 30 days, 60 days. How many of you guys have heard about that? They are talking about a $10,000 purchase order. If you think you can build your business on $10,000 purchase orders, go right ahead, sign up for those programs. What we tell people is that if you want to build a sustainable business, if you want to secure millions of dollars in federal contracting, you need to build a platform. That platform has about 8 different components. First of which is your branding and marketing. They got to know who you are, they got to know what you do, what you stand for, and what's your value proposition. Why am I going to pay you as opposed to the other 75 to 80,000 small businesses in the federal marketplace to do this thing? Average small business in the federal marketplace wins $2.8 million in contracts a year. It takes about 3 years and $150,000 to establish your business in the federal marketplace. Our goal is to reduce that down to 1 year and $50,000, and there's a way to do that. But once you do it, it's like riding a motorcycle. Anybody ever rode a motorcycle know when you start out, it's the most terrifying thing to do is to get out on a highway on a motorcycle. But once you've figured it out, and once you're able to do it, it's an exhilarating thing. And that's what federal government contracting. Once you figure it out, and once you build that customer base, you can literally make millions and millions of dollars. Because what they do is the government has to spend 23% of its dollars, that's $700 billion, with small businesses. Currently, they do about 27%. That translates into $160 billion that are going to small businesses. There are only 70,000 small businesses in the federal marketplace winning these awards. The government went from spending $343 billion in 2015. They've doubled that in the last 7 years. It continues to grow. So there's opportunities. But in order to do that, marketing, branding. Next, you've got to have a back office structure that makes sense. Can you provide accounting to the government that can be audited? Because a lot of contracts are cost plus contracts. That means the government will pay you for your cost plus a fee and overhead. But if you can't track your cost, then you're going to lose money because the government has this clause that says that I will audit your books in the future to see if you met the numbers. Now, if you undercharge the government, they will pay you a bonus at the end.
Rich, I'll add that with that audit is determining whether or not the costs are what they call allocable, allowable costs. So you need to understand what those things would be. Like, can you go party on money that you're receiving from the federal government? Definitely not. So understanding how you can even spend money within your organization is regulated by the federal government.
But you can sponsor events, just not the alcohol. But the other side of it is if your accounting system does not track the cost properly, then the government will take money back. So another aspect of this is you need to be able to capture business. So in the government space, people will say, what's your BD like, your business development, or what's your capture management like? And people use those terms intertwined, but we think of them as different. BD is the process over time of establishing who you are, securing a contract, completing that contract, and re-winning it. Capture management is within that process of identifying what things make sense for you, whether or not you can provide a compelling response, building a team, and then winning that work. So that is a process. The way we tell people is you don't necessarily want to get out and be a prime contractor day one. Why? Because the worst thing you can do is not win something, is to win a contract that you're not qualified and capable of executing. Because if you do, and you got two choices. You can deliver on the contract, lose money, and get that past performance they talk about, or you can say, I can't do it. Once that happens, you become blackballed, and it's going to be really difficult to get other contract opportunities in the future. So what we suggest is become a subcontractor. Find a company that makes sense for what you do, where you want to grow, see if you can establish a relationship with them, get some work, learn how they deliver on their dime, because your requirements as a subcontractor is a lot lower, and then use that as a platform to springboard you into the future. So for 2 years, we didn't have any prime contracts. made a decent amount of money, enough to feed, twins and plus one other kid, off of all subcontracts. Was it 6 months ago we got our first prime contract? Got a couple more, and now, that 3-year process, 3 years in, we're starting to win more prime contracts. But yet and still, our biggest awards are subcontracts. Some company comes along, hey, we got a $20 million opportunity we're going after. We have a 20% small business utilization process. We know Jennifer from her space from her profile, her marketing and branding within the space. We trust that she can get it done. We're going to give you that 20%. So boom, that's an $8 million contract that we didn't have to capture. But part of that is establishing who you are. So she's been doing this for 15 years. So who's local? So if you're local, and even if you're not, there's an organization called the National Contract Management Association. They set the rules, or don't set the rules. They are the rule hold. I don't know the right way to say it.
They communicate and engage between government and industry to communicate kind of what the rules are. They help make sure both government and industry understand. They do a lot of training for both sides to make sure that both sides have the resources to the information they need to be successful.
So NCMA is a lot of people that buy for the government. They go there and learn what are the rules to being a government purchaser. They also train buyers on how to sell to the federal government. So if you're local, we're starting an NCMA chapter in Prince George's County, but there's chapters in Tysons, Bethesda, Baltimore. They're all around the country. Find a chapter, get involved, establish who you are, and that's step one. Another step to building your brand. So we talked about back office. We talked about accounting platforms. We talked about SAM.
Let's talk about payroll.
So payroll.
Payroll and human resources.
We got a question.
Yes.
NCMA, National Contract Management Association. So if you look us up on LinkedIn, I kind of actually look like I look right now. So, okay, good.
If you can go to slide 11, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So one of the things around payroll and HR, how many people are confident in their payroll and HR system for their organization? All right, so not surprised. We have been.
Find her.
That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. We have a great person that manages our HR function for us, but we have the worst resources in terms of like some of the things that support our staff. And we were having a discussion, hey, how can we get better customer service from some of our vendors? And she said, well, I've talked to other companies and they have the same issue. So it's really important because you're paying a cost for some of these services that are going to manage your payroll, going to manage your benefits, insurance, all of those things. It's a cost to your organization. And so one of the things is the customer service and the time you spend. Sometimes it's a loss. But those are the things that are going to keep your staff happy. You want to make sure they get paid on time. And so we've just been having conversations on where are the best vendors at that support this part of your organization, which is a big piece of making sure things run smoothly. When you're delivering on contracts, you have to hit payroll, right? The government, they don't care how you do it, but you have to pay your staff that are on their contracts. Human resources, you have to make sure that they're adequately trained, they have the right resources in doing those types of things. And compliance is a huge aspect of that. So it's really important you guys have the right team in place with the right set of skills to be able to deliver in the federal government, because compliance is number one.
And all of these things cost money.
They all cost money.
The beauty so you got to track those costs. Again, we go back to the accounting system. But the government, these are what's called allowable costs. So the back office management, the payroll, the compliance, the benefits, all of that stuff can be recaptured back from the government, and it's in what they call your fringe and then indirect costs. So if you capture all of that information, the government pays you to do all of this training. And if you're offering this high level of training, benefits, healthcare, then more people are going to work. We know this is a tight environment. It's really difficult to find employees. So being able to deliver all of that is going to be really helpful.
Lastly, I just want to end on this one with engaging with experts and resource networks. We talked about NCMA, but you guys being in the room together today and coming to events like this, you have to really network and learn like what works well for businesses. Get those referrals. because it's going to save you time and money down the road. I'm always looking to my mentors to say, hey, what do you guys use? Or what has been your experience with this? And they'll share that information with you. So I say, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to establish those relationships that are really going to help you save time and energy in the long run.
And a lot of that can be gotten from NCMA. That's where a lot of Jennifer's mentors and now people that I consider my mentors have come from. How many of you have a technology company? Okay, so we're really talking a lot about contracts, but for technology, particularly if you have an emerging technology, that has what's called a dual use. It can be used for government, it can be used for commercial. There's something called a SBIR, a Small Business Innovation Research Grant. So the government will give you in phase one, I think so, 278,000 plus or minus to take your idea and create a MVP. If it works, you can then go to phase two where the government will help you develop a working prototype or a product that's deliverable. And I think in most agencies they have different amounts, but it's like 1.5 million. Then in phase three, the government will issue you a contract based upon that product you've developed. So we have a mentor who's working with a company. They went through phase one, phase two. They got a 20-year exclusive contract with the DOD, branch of the DOD. He kind of told me what it did, the product, and I just started doing use cases in my head. There's at least $3 billion worth of opportunity that he has access to. And it's a 20-year exclusive contract. And that was just on the 3 use cases we talked about. So if you're in technology, now, here's the thing about the federal government. They slow. They take a long time. So depending on what you're doing, the first place I would go would be the National Science Foundation, because their SBIR applications are open to anything that's interesting. For the different DOD and other agencies, they have what's called topics that they're interested in. And a lot of times those topics are defined by partners they already have. So 50 to 60% of SBIRs are won by repeat winners. So if you have a DOD use case, you probably want to find somebody who's currently in the DOD space and partner with them. Yes?
How do you compete with the bigger competitors? Because I work in the government contracting, and I work in cybersecurity. So if you wanted to start like a government contracting consultant firm, how do you compete with the ones who have been here for a while, who have all the clients and things like that?
You don't.
No.
And I say that not to be dismissive, because you partner, like, so IBM, or actually let me take, so and I won't say IBM, we have a company that we have a relationship with. The guy told me if it's less than $300 million, he's not even looking at it. You're probably not going to start out at $300 million range, right? But there's what's called a small business utilization requirement for any contract over $750,000. So they have to, as subcontract, somewhere between 10 to 25% of a requirement to small businesses. So if you have that skill set, what you want to do is, one, look for partnering opportunities or look for opportunities that are in the $3 to $5 million range. And so when I use these numbers, I'm thinking of a 5-year contract, because the federal government typically does things in 5-year increments. So if I say a $5 million contract, it's a $1 million a year contract, but they'll issue a $5 million award, which is what do they call it? It's one base year, 4 option years.
So you're not, each year is not guaranteed. They just reevaluate you each year to see if they want to do business with you. And the crazy thing is, as long as they take to actually award you a contract, they only give you 60 days notice whether or not they're going to continue on with you. So again, understanding the rules is really important. Partner, utilize relationships in government contracting are like, that's how it works. So look into your network. Who do you know at some of these companies that you want to do business with? If you don't know anybody, you got to get out there, follow them on LinkedIn, figure out what events they go to. I don't want to say stalk them, but literally, you have to get in front of these people to learn who they are, what their needs are, and do your research from that standpoint.
And I'm gonna come right back to you really quickly. Also, if your company wins a contract and they got small business requirements, say, hey, want me to start a company? And That way they can get what they need because they know that you can deliver because you're already there. You're
Yeah, I think it's super important as well. Whereas, for instance, like cybersecurity is big. It's kind of daunting, especially when you're thinking about a lot of stuff, like insurance, all this stuff as far as jumping on for contract. What support? And I know you kept mentioning a little bit as far as regulations, changing regulations, and I know you said there's an association that you guys partner with or lean on. But as contractors and businesses, is there a good ecosystem as far as support for you guys as business owners, as far as contractors, as far as helping manage the regulations?
So we have, so I slightly understand what the regulations are for CMMC. My background is not in tech. Cybersecurity is just like way up here for me. But I know it's required for our business. We have a vendor that manages that whole process for us. They manage our systems. We pay them good money to do it. I don't like it, but it's one of those things as they start to implement those regulations in the next 6 months. If you guys are watching, it's coming. And so it's really required right now only for DoD contracts, but it's going to hit the civilian side too. So whether you're ready now or you get ready later, you have to prepare for it, and mainly from a financial standpoint, because you're going to want those experts that understand the clauses that are in your contracts, as well as how to set your organization and your systems up. And then all the documentation you have to maintain while you have those systems in place.
So my question is mainly, do you feel like you have the proper support now, or are you mainly leaning on other managed service providers to kind of make sure you guys are ready?
We are leaning on a managed service provider. I do look at our contracts in terms of, I'm always looking at the clauses, if they're in there, if they're not. When we were looking for vendors, someone wanted to charge us $15,000 to assess whether or not we had the clause in the contract. I said, I'm a contracting officer. They're not in my contract. Well, that's what it costs. So again, you have to really understand what the requirements are before you even front the money for people to do it. So you need some general understanding before you go pay somebody $15,000 to look at something that you never really needed them to do in the first place. Right. And so fortunately, we found a vendor that waived the fee for us. And said, yeah, you only have 2, it was when we first started, it was like, we only have 2 laptops, we have no contracts that have the clause in it. They're like, okay, we'll just move on to implementation.
Gotcha.
But you have to be able to have those conversations. We can go to slide 13. Actually, 15.
You got a question right here.
I just want a quick question. Can you help me navigate, I guess, bid bond?
Bid bond. Are you in the construction space?